Welcome to Life in the Music Business, a masterclass with Professor Pooch and your host, BACEFACE.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? And welcome back to Life in the Music Business with Professor Pooch. Today, we are in two different locations. I'm actually out in New York working, and Pooch is out in Philadelphia. So start off. Pooch, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine. And by the way, people, that's not a picture behind BaseFace.
Yeah,
That's actually New York City background you're seeing right now,
yep, yep. I could even probably pick up my camera for you guys to check it out, but it's intense.
Yep. And tell
Cool.
them why you're there.
So I'm out here because I work in a studio out here. I'm not going to mention any names just for like privacy reasons, but I work in a fairly well-known studio out here in Manhattan, and I've been working here for about a year. So I've been here working like this week, like the past couple of weeks, like almost every day. So it's been hard for me to be in Philly at my studio. So me and Pooch were able to make this work through Zoom, luckily, and here we are.
Yeah, I mean, it's also another funny thing. We're actually shooting this in the daytime.
Very
We
true.
usually shoot at midnight, which sounds funny to people, but I'm the night owl. So, basically, BaseFace gets a chance to finish his studio sessions, and we shoot at midnight or later. We've, excuse me, I think we've shot a couple at 1:30 or 2 a.m. or
Yep.
something like that. But 2 a.m. is just starting my evening. And I work through the night. I'm one of those weird people that work through the night. I go by Professor Pooch Standard Time, which is 3 to 6 p.m. Afternoon is my morning. 6 to 12 is my afternoon, and 12 to whenever. God, I've been getting to sleep 7, 8, 9 a.m. in the morning. It's been really crazy because it's my best working time.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you really do function differently in during those times. Like for me, especially, like I feel like I'm more creative at those points in the night
Same
because it's
here.
just like nobody's around. I'm just hanging out by myself, and we're just doing what we got to do until I basically fall asleep.
Yeah, I stopped picking up people's vibes in the middle of the night. So it gets clearer to me. I'm one of those people that can pick up if there's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, I'm in Philadelphia, and I can always tell if the Eagles win or lose by the vibe in the air kind of a thing. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
interesting because it's like Twilight where you are, looking at the backgrounds and stuff like that.
yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I got this view. I'm actually currently staying in a hotel, but that was just by choice. It was just the easiest thing for me to do at the moment. And yeah, I mean, they have pretty nice views, so I've been enjoying it as much as I can. And as you know, I'm probably going to be going to work in a little while, so we're that's what we got going on.
Yeah. Uh, well, there's a bunch of little subjects I'd like to cover today,
Awesome.
and that are in the news, actually. There's a thing called, and I'll give you the legal term, and then I'll go into it in English. It's called force majeure. Force majeure, sometimes you'll hear it as acts of God. Now, this fits the pandemic. And what's happening is, oh boy, there's going to be a lot of lawsuits. And there's lawsuits right now because the insurance companies don't want to pay the record companies for losing, losing so much money and things like that because of the force majeure, the acts of God. The pandemic to them is acts of God. And there's a big fight going on all about this right now. And you'll see it, by the way, in every record company contract. It'll be in a lot of management type contracts. It's just one of those things, and there's a lot of insurance companies don't want to pay because this is an act of God. Oh, and by the way it hits artists and stuff like that, in the force majeure contract, within the contract of especially a record company, they say, well, because of, and force majeure could also be like fires, anything that disrupts normal life kind of a thing, that they can extend your contract. It's like those months don't exist. What you always must do in a contract is state, well, it can't go over 6 months or I could be released if I wish to be. It's just one of those things, you know, and you'll see it in every major label contract. I've seen them in all of them. It's just one of those things in life, you know.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so the pandemic has hit people in a lot of weird, different ways.
that's interesting. I mean, that's something that's like beyond everybody's control. Like when the maker comes knocking, I mean, you don't have a choice. You know what I mean? So it's interesting that they have that in the contract where they can extend it, because typically, I mean, if somebody passes away, I mean, they shouldn't be able to still be in contract or whatever the circumstances may be. I mean, it's insane that's even a thing.
Yeah,
Like,
well, you know, somebody came up with it through the years, you know, it's a way to extend somebody's contract and say, well, we had a fire or this happened or that happened. Just make sure, and usually it does state, well, after 6 months, the time's got to start again. And if you can't, you can get out of the contract. Just make sure that it's limited to a certain amount of months. You know, they might have had all kinds of problems that they might want to put under this clause, you know, like fires or this or that, you know, whatever they come up with, you know, they got imaginations too.
yeah, yeah, it's funny because I mean they're a business at the end of the day, so they try to make sure that they can cover themselves at all points throughout the process. As any business, I mean, it's risk management and being able to put everything, you know, align all your ducks in a row to be able to make those decisions. But I still feel that there's still like the new trend that I feel it's actually happening is like along with the independent mindset and going in and doing your things yourself and doing that type of stuff. It's also like being able to get out of contracts is also going to be like a new trend of like the escape clause that we talked about in one of our episodes that you guys should go back and listen to.
Yeah, well, yeah, the escape clause is what prevents, you know, that from happening. That, you know, real quick, escape clause has 3 steps. You got to reach a specific goal, you know, because the contract's always one-sided. You know, it says what you, the artist, has to do, or, you know, you, whoever has to do. It never says what they have to do. So you give them the 3 steps are, well, you know, a certain specific, make sure it's specific goal must be reached within a specific period of time, or you're out of the contract. And just make sure all rights revert back to you, like those songs that they have of yours and things like that, that normally will be, you know, that happen during the term of the contract, you know, when you're under contract and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the other important thing for people to remind themselves is that the material and all the music and stuff that they make, when you're dealing with a label, it's considered a product. So just because you're a person that makes music and you love making music, it's no less than having a barcode when it comes to dealing with a label and putting it on a shelf and selling it at like your local grocery store. It's the same idea, and that's how they keep track of all the things to be able to pay you as well. One of the ways, at least.
Yeah. And by the way, people, you know, it might sound funny to artists, but you are a product. And you yourself are a product. So keep that in mind. You know, it's not to knock you down, but, you know, you're an artist. You're a product to them. Another thing that's come up lately, and boy, this has been fought forever, and talk about the changing times, but the Department of Justice in the United States doesn't think so. Back in, God, I forget, it was the late 30s or the 1930s or 1940s. They had this agreement, and it had to do with ASCAP and BMI. And what it had to do, they're the performing rights organizations that pay the songwriter and the publisher. And what they stopped them from doing is being able to charge, since they were like a monopoly or something, and companies wanted to use their music and all those kinds of stuff, they would stop them from charging all kinds of insane costs for the use of the songs. And I think that's motorcycle out there right now. Yeah, that's what happens during these times, folks. You know, real life seeps in. So what happens, and this has been God fought for years, ASCAP and BMI try to get it settled again. It has to do with what is known as a compulsory license. It's a copyright term, compulsory license. And this is what happens. If a song, let's say you want to do a cover song, a publisher cannot turn you down if you want to use your song. Once it's first released, the publisher has the choice of who releases it first. But once it's first released, anybody could do the song. And they can't turn you down as long as, and boy, this has come up with me lately with different people, as long as you don't change the words or the melody. Now, what was it, Al Yankovic, it took him a year to get an okay to do Eat It from Michael Jackson's Beat It, you know, kind of a thing. And you're not supposed to change it. But what it is the publishing companies and ASCAP and BMI want to be able to charge you extra if they, you know, you're going to use this song for this or that or whatever. And this consent decree and all this stuff, I'm not into the legal terminology and stuff, is making it, you know, that ASCAP and BMI just has to use regular, you know, things. They can't charge extra. They want to be able to charge extra and stuff. And part of the problem is ASCAP and BMI are at a little disadvantage because of CSAC, another performing rights organization, was formed afterwards, and it didn't come under this law. It was like an anti-monopoly law. Well, you can't do the, you know, I'm not going to get into all the legal stuff. But CSAC can actually, you know, issue licensing. See, ASCAP and BMI do not issue licenses, you know, for if your music going to be in video or, you know, video, film, commercials, you know, what am I, video games, which is very big right now and stuff like that. Now, what happens is, let's say you want to do a cover song. It's already been out. You want to do a cover song. You just have to notify the publisher. You do have to notify them. And I've had, oh God, I run into situations where publishers were holding back or giving the thing out. I said, hey, just record it. You send it in that you want to do it. They can't turn you down, you know, as long as you don't change the words or the music drastically, you know, stuff like that.
Wow, that's great to know for people that are looking to take older songs that have already been released that are super popular and cover them themselves, and either have somebody produce something behind it, or just even just use just like the main parts of the song and play it on the instrument.
Yeah. What I've seen mostly is that if you send it, the publisher, I mean, wants other people to do it normally. I ran into this situation in Nashville where the publisher did not want somebody else to do it because they also owned the singer who had the original, and they didn't want to hear any other versions competing with the original at that time and place, kind of a thing. It's kind of, yeah, it's a kind of weird thing. And,
business move.
Oh yeah, oh, Nashville is, I'm sorry folks, and I've said it before, so I don't mind saying it. I think Nashville is the scam capital of the world in music. I've run into more problems dealing with Nashville. And, oh, what's really hilarious is, oh, this is funny when you want to do a cover song of Nashville. Like one of the songs had, one of the writer publishers was with ASCAP. This is on one song, was with ASCAP. Another was with BMI, and another was CSAC. And they made it that there was no one administrative publisher. The administrative publisher usually handles it for everybody. You know, I usually make it so with my clients that I make them the administrative publisher. So if they're co-publishing with another publisher, they still have final say and stuff. But what was happening is these artists were having to get permission from the ASCAP writer and the BMI writer and and the C-sec, right?
Mm,
Yeah. Oh, what a mess!
yeah,
Oh
I mean
my
that
God.
everybody knows from personal experience, just like when you argue with somebody and you have that type of situation where you're trying to resolve it and you have to go talk to this person to find out the truth about this and go there. It's like whisper trying to follow back the whisper down the lane. And I mean it's not always easy, you know what I mean?
Oh,
Unless
the
you're
whisper
persistent.
down the rain, yeah, whisper down the lane thing comes up with different things. Yeah, I'm not gonna get into the whole thing, but yeah, it's nothing like. Uh, that's why you want to, like, if somebody comes to me for one of my songs, they don't have to worry about dealing with anybody. I'm the administrative publisher with my co-writers, and it's fine. I give them. I'm one of those people that believe in. Look, you can't say which words or music are worth more. And usually, I write with the same writers. So sometimes they'll write a little more. Sometimes I'll write a little more. I just make it 50-50, and that's the thing. Uh, Oh boy, yeah, we can get into a whole mess of things like that, but I'd like to cover a few more subjects. One of the biggest things still going on is that vinyl is really selling really well. And matter of fact, it's outdoing CD sales. Well,
Which makes sense. I mean, CDs were only popular for a short amount of time, so it makes sense.
yeah, the problem with vinyl, there's several problems right now. And the problem is there's not enough factories to make it. It takes like 8 weeks at a lot of times or more to get your vinyl pressings back. And by the way, you wonder about vinyl? I'll tell you some hilarious things. First of all, that I think 47% of the people that buy vinyl are under the age of 25. Which most people wouldn't think of. They say, oh, yeah, the older people, the baby boomers and stuff, they're the ones that buy the vinyl. No, the
Nope.
kids are buying the vinyl. The funny one was Billie Eilish, who her audience is tweens and teens. In her first week release of a vinyl album, it sold 77,000
All I
vinyl
can say,
records. Now you're
all I can
wondering,
say is God bless her.
yeah, and the weird part is, and artists have to learn this. The weird part is, see, the great thing about vinyl is the artwork as much as anything. These kids are buying the vinyl and they put the artwork up on the walls. And I'm sure they get their parents to, if they don't have a record player, to get a record player. But seriously, artists should definitely think about going vinyl for many reasons. One, you can charge more. I mean, I see it normally around $30, but you could put a lot more into it. You got a package of, a vinyl album's got a package. You could put in promo pieces, you could put in more artwork, you could put in this, you could put in that in the package. So it's really an amazing thing for that kind of thing. So it
Especially,
allows you to charge more. And the great thing is, it's not like a digital thing like a CD or a streaming or anything like that, because you can't just put it on the internet. If you do, you're making a copy from vinyl. You know, now I actually have a machine. I don't use it for that. That has, believe it or not, a combination of a record player, a cassette player, and a CD player, and you can go to, make copies on CDs. Okay, supposedly I never even tried it,
wow.
but there's a lot of advantages of vinyl. Also, one of the things, and boy, this is a big war that goes on, is the I need a drink.
Yeah, take a second. I'll say on the side note, I mean, vinyl is incredible because it's like something physical you can hold. And one cool thing people don't know about vinyl is that it degrades over time. So the more you play it, the less in the sound quality goes.
And by the way, you it reminds me of an important topic, is that, like, I have this thing, if an engineer really knows how to mix, they don't need mastering. I work with engineers that are, the mastering and engineering, the mixing and mastering is done in the same step. But to do vinyl, it's got to be done differently. There's different configurations. I'm not a technical person. I
Well,
don't know how it
I,
exists.
I can speak on it for 1 second. The one thing I do know about vinyl is that you can't have that much bass. So if you go back and listen to all the major records that came back out on vinyl, the needle is playing on the record, and that's how it reads the grooves and it plays sonically through the speaker. But when you have too much bass, the waveforms, they move so slow that it'll knock the needle right off the record. So they had to do a totally different mix to be able to get it to play right on vinyl.
Well, that was one thing I liked when, excuse me, one of the major things I liked, believe it or not, of the disco era, they finally started showing the bass, but it was starting to get, they were able to handle it better and stuff like that. In the old days, when I did my first album, God, it was late 60s, the master was a thing called acetate. It was like 3/8 of an inch thick, something like that. And it wears out after 100 plays. Yeah, the mixing's different. You got to almost mix it hotter, because when you go from analog to analog to analog kind of things, you're losing frequencies. So they have to push it a little higher so you don't lose it all. Excuse me. The other thing, what this comes into also is analog versus digital. And you'll find fights on that all the time. I admit the digital is much easier to work with. You can cut and paste and things like that. I remember working in a studio with tape, and you can't speed up or slow down tape because it changes it low, and it sounds like with the real high if you speed it up. So when we were doing things that had to be at exact time, you would be cutting little slivers of tape and having to splice it together. And oh man, they'd have these little tiny slivers. Oh, we got to, for commercials and stuff, we have to put this, it's got to come out exactly to 28 seconds or 29. I remember, it's been a while, stuff like that. But what comes up a lot, excuse me, I'm not used to this time of day. It sounds funny. But the sound quality. The great thing one of the great things I liked about analog is you could actually hit it really hot. Mm-hmm. Digital, if you go too high, it's the most horrible sounding sound.
Yeah, it's actual digital distortion. It's actually destructive to the sound that it's bringing in. So if you're coming in
to your ears.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, we should put a caution up here on the right. You may lose your hearing.
Oh, I can tell you stories about that where something, we won't go into that right now. Mm-hmm. But the analog, see the sound, the thing I like about analog, and by the way, a lot of smart producers do this, they make sure it hits analog somewhere along the recording process. Sometimes they'll go to an analog board or the tube amps, things like that, certain things where you can get that fuller sound. Because analog is a much fuller sound. It captures more overtones. The best example of that I could actually give in talking that I can't write and explain is digital is like, doo, analog is, woo. It's a fuller, it's a warmer, fuller. I kind of equate it as digital, which is a colder sound, a thinner sound, to analog, which is a warmer sound, to video, which is a colder picture, to film, which is warmer. Now they're making strides in film especially, and analog, they still can't get that full overtones. If anyone knows music, knows about overtones, kind of a fuller sound. So yeah, but people, think about vinyl because, just realize it takes time to manufacture. They were building another plant in Nashville on it. I think they're trying to put them up again. And you brought up a very important point, BACEFACE. You can hold it in your hands. That's why Japan held off so long from stopping CDs. CDs still sell in Japan. They want to feel something physical in their hand.
That was always my favorite part, going to like back in the day when we had Circuit City and Comp USA and these types of places. Like were some of my favorite, I might add. But going there as a kid and being like, "Yo, Dad, like I want that CD," and like him giving me Zeppelin 2 on CD, like that was like my holy grail when I was a kid.
Yeah, but one thing I ran into a problem with that thin thickness, warmth and stuff. I there was some old albums that were out and stuff, so I got the CD version. I couldn't listen to them. They're very compared with the old warm full sound. It was very thin and
Yeah,
tinny.
yeah,
It
it's
lost something.
super it's super high fidelity, but at the same time, it's kind of it loses that feeling, like you saying, because it's not going through the like the mechanical part of the tape. Like it has to run through the tape, through all the circuitry and all this stuff, and by the time it gets to the tape has its own sound. So it really just fattens things up. It's almost like the best way I could describe it visually for people is that like when you knead bread and you're making about like you're trying to make like a cake or something, or you're trying to make a like a you know what I mean, like a roll of bread. When it's sitting there and it's flat, that's like digital. But when it's like the yeast kicks in and it rises, the dough rises. That is like what it's like going into analog, like and going into tape. Like if you were to put a kick drum into a tape machine, instead of it being like, it would be like
Yep.
more full, like. And that's you can emulate that many different ways. For technical people, look up at EQP1A Pultec EQ. That's really good to use on kick drums. But side note.
Well, what I used to do, now I had the second MIDI studio in Philadelphia. Now, MIDI is multiple instrument digital interface, where it was a combination. I had what was known as an emulator 2, was one of the first big workstations. And it was computer, it was a sound sampler. That was MIDI'd with I used three different synthesizers. I had two DX7s and what was known as an Oberheim expander, which was an analog synth. And what you could do is I would use the real bass, like a Fender bass, on the digital instrument, but I mix it. Sometimes I like a thicker, sometimes distorted bass for certain things, and I would put it, MIDI'd it through and got this little kind of distortion type sounds that I liked from the DX7 or this or analog or whatever. And it was all cool. But my point of bringing this up is, and you brought up the bass drum, is exactly the point. And by the way, then I went to tape from there. What I did was I went to the multi-track tape and then down to a mixtape, and sometimes down to a cassette, to give it out or whatever like that. But what I used to do is, if say I wanted some new instruments, and Emulator 2 was a sampler. What I used to do is I would listen to people's drum machines, and I find a bass drum that was, as close as I can get it. But I like to feel drums. What I would do, instead of putting it from the drum machine into the emulator, I would go drum machine into a cassette player and then put it onto it. So instead of the bass drum being, poof, it was poof, it was much thicker sound. And then the emulator allowed you to cut, the fronts and the backs, so you had a clear bass drum and stuff like that. Oh yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of tricks you find out and stuff. It's just, it's like, boy, this drum machine thing. Well, it was the early days of the drum machine too. Okay, folks, but they were just thin, the sounds, and I want to be. I'm a rocker. I want to be blown back.
Yeah,
kind of.
same here. Same here. Drums are super, super important for me. The way that they hit and the way that they come into the mix. I mean, they have to be like one of the loudest things next to the main vocal for me in the mix, and that's how a lot of the pop records are nowadays. You can go listen to anything on the Billboard Top 100 or Spotify #1 or whatever, and you can listen. And if you just go and hear the drums and just go from like a critical perspective listening, it's to blow your mind away how they can get things so loud but so clear at the same time.
Oh yeah, and I'm like I said, I remember in the early days, because I mean I've been in the music industry since the late '60s, and On the recordings, the bass drum and the bass, they weren't out there much. You couldn't really hear them much. Sometimes I had to really strain to find the bass drum. I know it was in the recording and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah, the reason that they really did that, from my experience and stuff, all my teachers that taught me, was really based on the vinyl. Like, that was the medium that was played back then. So if they had a
Correct.
loud kick drum and vinyl, they wouldn't be able to just do what we're doing nowadays, or like what's happening in hip hop. Like the 808 would literally, you can hear somebody driving down the street and playing a song nowadays from like 2 miles away, because
Oh
of
yeah.
this low frequencies. They travel so far because they're slower. It's like, and that's the thing. It's like, you wouldn't be able to do that back in the day. So we've come so far in 100 years, and civilization has come in a hole almost. I mean,
Well, you brought up an interesting point too, with the bass and bass drum kind of a thing. It's an 8-foot wave, or longer. It's bass travels. You need a fuller sound. That's why if you're real close to the stage, a lot of time in the speakers, you'll hear more of the high end, the back, you'll hear more of the bass end because of the waves and stuff. Also, people, when they hear sounds coming from another house or apartment next to them, you'll notice it's usually the bass and stuff, because it has to fight, goes through the walls to hear it. That's what you'll hear the
yeah.
first,
Hmm.
in thin-walled kind of houses. I was lucky. My house, what you see here, I lived here for 37 years, believe it or not. It's one of the older houses, and I loved it. I could have a studio here, and I record in the middle of the night. I could blast. Nobody heard anything, because the walls were 18 inches thick in these old houses. And, you didn't have that same kind of problem.
Yeah, it's incredible. So I mean, for people, this is just also a side note. Like, the lower the frequencies, the farther they travel, because the slower that they move.
Correct.
The higher frequencies, the quicker that they travel and dissipate, and that's why you don't hear a main vocal uh, from somebody's car when they're driving down the street. You hear the bass and the kick drum and all that stuff. So that explains some science for you guys that didn't know that.
No, hey, it's good to learn. I've been like in the industry full time for 50 years, and I'm still learning stuff. Well, there's always something new happening. But here's something that's, I'm going to just jump subjects here. And this has been coming up so much recently, and it's been there since the beginning of time. It's dealing with people dealing with people kinds of situations. And I just want to state this very importantly to people of bands, especially, or when you're working with a project where there's multiple people and stuff. I make this a rule when I work with anybody. If something bothers you about anything, speak about it right away. You'll see some people that'll just hold things in and something's bothering them. And the problem is, we're creative people. So we can create these monster mountains. Like,
Hmm.
what's the saying? Yeah, don't make mountains out of molehills. I think that's the old antique term for it and stuff. But boy, I see this so much, and they hold it in. My thing is to get things out in the open right away. If you have a problem with me or something I'm doing or work, or we're working together on a project, if you have a problem with one of your people you're working with, bring it out into the open immediately. Before it grows into some, I've seen where it happens where weeks later people are really upset and they forgot even what they were originally upset about.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's a bunch of, it's negative stuff, and you just
Yeah.
got to solve the problem. Sometimes it's an easy thing. It might have been a misunderstanding about something like that. And then, oh boy, yeah, I'm just trying to think of things that I'm allowed to talk about and stuff.
Yeah, well,
But yeah,
the one thing I can say about what you were just talking about is two things. One is that when you, like, I'm one of those type of people that used to, when I was growing up, bottle everything up and that type of stuff. But and I'm able to deal with it differently than other people. So that's that. But aside from that, when you bottle things up, there's 2 points here that I'm going to make. The first point is, when you bottle things up, eventually it overcomes you and becomes larger than you, and you almost explode in that way, and you start yelling at somebody. And the other thing, which leads me to my second point, is there's a right and wrong way to say something, right? So like, say I have a problem with Pooch, right? I'm not going to go there and be like, Pooch, I can't believe you did this, blah, 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 blah. I hate you, blah, blah, and start throwing all these negative words and start cursing and all that stuff. That's the wrong way, especially when you're dealing with creative people. Some people aren't really outspoken like that, so they really get like they become very reserved, and they like kind of like they're shy and they tuck away in themselves, and there's different personalities. But in the end, the right way to really approach it is never to really make somebody upset. It's more about like saying it casually, like, hey man, and do you ever think about it like this, or did you ever think about trying this like this? I think it'd be really cool, instead of being like, you gotta do this, there's no other way, my way or the highway.
My thing is that, yeah, you're perfectly right on a couple of things I agree with. Yeah, there's a thing, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And, like I say, constructive criticism is fine. Destructive criticism, forget it. It just ain't cool. You can say the same thing. I was guilty of it when I was young too. But by the way, another important point is you were talking about, holding it in. It's really bad for your health. That's a way to get a heart attack. You got to let it out, but just be careful how you say things. You're not out to destroy people. You're out to solve a problem. Okay? You might not like something I did or whatever, but just say, look, Pooch, you did this and this bothers me. Now we can have a constructive conversation kind of a thing. And, it's cool.
Very important. Very, very important for successful relationships and long-term relationships, is being able to work things out. And people will respect you for speaking your mind. But if you walk in the room and somebody asks you how the song is, or how a girl asks you how they look in the dress, and then you're completely brutally honest and you make them feel like crap, then you did the wrong thing there. So just make sure that you know that.
Oh, what's that one thing where like, it comes up in cartoons even stuff, but a woman says, do I look fat to you? There's no way to win that argument.
No,
you know what I mean?
there's not.
No, you look fine.
You look perfect for me. You're exactly the way I like you. That's usually my response.
Oh boy. Yeah, yeah, but people, getting along with people, you have to learn to just state what's in your mind. Like, I was pretty bad at it when I was young too. I was known for the awful truth. It's just as I got older, I learned tact. But you put it right. I forget how you said it, but like, if I don't want to say to somebody, they give me a song, because I have to listen to a lot of clients and other people's songs. I'm not going to say this song sucks. What's that? First of all, it's not helpful to the person.
No.
What I usually look for is something good within it.
Of course.
Oh, I like the direction you're heading, this and that. But, why don't you work a little more on this other thing like that? Oh, by the way, this comes up a lot. And that is, a lot of times, if the vocalist is involved with producing, and the problem is in a studio, and I'm sure at BACEFACE you run into it too, in a studio, excuse me, the artist and the engineer have heard the song so many times that they hear the words even when they don't hear them. And what I mean by that is they'll mix the voice too low in the mix. Now, low can mean a bunch of things. We'll get into that. But too low in the mix, I'm listening again, and if I have to strain to hear the words, I feel like, well, it doesn't matter that you can't hear it. Hey, if you want it in TV or film or video games, they want the words to match a script. It's really important. And by the way, you can, if good engineers know how to do this, you can put the voice in a pocket where the voice is really low in volume and the instruments are plastic, but you can hear the voice clearly.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
where you put it. There's panning, there's depth. That's why a lot of musicians, yeah, they can during these times. By the way, instrument sales have skyrocketed during this. So instruments are, you know, really selling really well. But what's happening is a lot of people get this recording equipment. It's rather inexpensive nowadays, and they'll mix the. It just gets into all kinds of problems where and I try not to lose my train of thought, but the engineers nowadays, or they don't realize they're engineering. They're recording stuff and stuff. A lot of my thing is, yeah, really make sure you record if you're doing regular instruments clearly and your sound is clean and stuff. But until you really learn how to mix, that is, blend the instruments together, give it to somebody that really knows how to mix.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
record the stuff that'll save you, excuse me, that'll save you money and stuff like that. And but give it to somebody that knows how to mix and understands depth and stuff. I get too many recordings. Everything's up front. And, you know, I love the engineers that say, well, we'll fix it in mastering. No, if they can't reach in and reach these instruments, they can't do anything with it except just raise levels and stuff like that.
Yeah. And that's actually an interesting point too, because being a recordist, somebody that records sound, is also an art within itself. So if you're looking for something like when you have a whole band and that type of stuff, like, well, you'll find with the more veteran engineers and recordists, and majority, almost all of which are both. They both record and they mix. So there's some people that just strictly mix. But when it comes to the recording, I've seen, in my own personal experience, a lot of them, they're recording to the final record. Their whole goal from the beginning, where they're setting up microphones and all this stuff, they may have 30, 40 microphones on a drum kit, and you're thinking, what is going on, right? And the thing is they're envisioning the final version of what that would be, and they're getting that in the beginning. But the only way you'd be able to know that and learn that is from experience, or being able to work with somebody that's highly accredited, that you can see, be like, wow. I've seen people take a speaker, right? There's one engineer, I don't know if we should be mentioning names, but one engineer takes a few speakers, right? And if you talk into a speaker, or like what I used to do when I was in a party and I didn't have a microphone, I would plug my headphone into the microphone jack and talk into the microphone, or into the one of the ears of the headphones, and it works as a microphone. So I saw an engineer take a speaker and use it in the reverse way. Instead of putting music out, it was taking music in, and he was using it as like the low part of his drum kit in his mix, which was absolutely fascinating to me, that something so simple like that, reversing the way that
Oh, yeah. And you learn that by accident sometimes, you know. It's one of those things that happen by accident, like you did, but just talking, hey, you found a way to do it. One more quick thing to bring up, but I think we're probably running pretty high on time here, is that one of the problems with the voice nowadays, a lot of times, some people want to have so much reverb on their voice that it makes it unintelligible. Here's the problem with it. It might sound really cool, but if a person has to strain and listen to understand something, because, you know, understand something, they're taking it out of the mood of the song and you're losing them. So people need to know how to use reverb, and people don't understand you can EQ reverb, okay? There's all kinds of things you could do, and there's ways of putting a delay before the reverb actually comes in, a split second, so you can understand the voice.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and it's not just the voice is too low. Sometimes it's just not in that pocket, you know, in a place where it's not messing with the other frequencies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's the wrong reverb. Sometimes it's the wrong microphone. You know, I used to know, like different engineers will say, just sing to me without the microphone, and they'll listen to the person's voice. They'll know what microphone to use on that particular person.
That's somebody that knows what they're doing, and that's very super important, because I mean, you can EQ a reverb, you can compress the reverb, you can put delays into different types of reverbs to create different depth. Like, when you walk into a church and you say yo and you hear the echo, it's a combination of reverb, early, late reflections, and some of delay because of how far the wall is all the way in the back and where you are listening wise and all that technical stuff. But you can get like, if you listen to all the major records that are coming out now, you will notice the reason that they're so that they become such a high selling records is because people can understand them, they can relate to them because they can hear everything. But if you're just drowning your stuff in reverb and, like Pooch is saying, you can't understand it, then you're defeating the purpose, unless you just don't want to be known and you want to be making music strictly for yourself. But if you want people to be able to get into your world and understand who you are musically and be able to become a fan or even a super fan, they have to be able to hear it off the bat and not have to strain to hear it.
Yeah, you strain them. You take the person out of the mood of the song, and then they can't feel it and stuff.
Yeah, and
exactly.
I believe it or not, I'm one of those people that really can't, for some strange reason, one way or another, I can't really sometimes tell what is being said in the song until I hear it 5 times, and then I finally get the whole picture, and I'm like, ah. But right off the bat, when I first listened, lyrics have always been something that's been hard for me to, like, really to be able to just write in my mind from beginning to end.
Well, yeah, and sometimes to some people, like in certain kinds of music, the words don't mean anything. It's the groove, it's the feel, it's whatever and stuff. But if you want it in TV and films, listen to the songs they use on TV shows. There may be very light instruments and the voices out there. That's why they do, God, I know some people do 20 different types of mixes. There might be the single mix, the album mix, the TV show mix. I mean, a lot of big things for TV and film, they wanted to end dead. And a lot of the old songs, they used to just fade it down, to quiet. You can't do that with film. They want to be able to let them cut it where they want to cut it for TV and film. So you have different kinds of things, and that, this is stuff you learn.
Yeah, exactly. And as you see, like, I'm still in New York, and the reason I'm here is because I'm living life in the music business, and you are learning from 2 people that live it every single day. Pooch has been living this for many, many years, and I'm very fortunate to have met him, be able to sit here down with you guys and really teach and provide guidance and education to something that we were both so passionate about. And again, thank you for guys for listening and sharing, subscribing. I mean, we are already up to 27. I think this is going to be, we already have 27 episodes released, which is amazing. So keep going back and listening and make it your religion, because at the end of the day, if you want to become successful, you have to know every nook and cranny. And it may not be that you want to be focusing on the music entertainment law or any of that type of stuff, but it's good to know little tidbits of it here and there so that you become well-rounded enough to be able to, almost represent yourself.
I tell people, it's like with my books, and same with the shows. Listen to them all, because sometimes you get it from the whole picture, and then all of a sudden it'll click. The more you hear where we're, the creative ways of working with business and stuff like that, be just as creative on the business end as you are on the artistic end. And I guess we've reached that time, I presume. So I'm just going to say thank you. Please check out all the episodes. Look up Life in the Music Business with Professor Pooch. Believe me, it shows up in your search engines and stuff. We're everywhere, and it's in video on YouTube, and it's going to be on Facebook also video. So tune in for the next episode. Take care, folks.
All right, bye, everyone.
Thanks for watching. Tune in for the next episode.